with the success, your recent success in the America's Cup and the push for a British team, is there still any chance for an Olympic return for you?
Yeah, thanks for that one. No, I came out last year and said that that was it for me after 2012 with the Olympics, and I'm still pretty happy with that decision for a number of reasons. I think firstly, to finish an Olympic career on the high of last year, I mean, we all saw what an amazing event it was, and to be a part of that and to be able to ultimately win that gold medal in front of a home crowd, I don't think you can ever experience anything better than that as an Olympian, to do that, to be able to compete on home soil or home waters. Physically, the Finn class, the boat that I sailed, is probably the toughest class physically, and I had long-term issues with my back, and I actually had to have an operation on my back at the beginning of last year, and I only barely made it back in time for the Olympics. So I think the physicality of that style of racing is limiting as well. And lastly, the America's Cup is a real ambition, and I was very fortunate to be part of this Oracle team, and that was a great experience. But I would love to lead a winning team, be part of a winning team again, and be part of a British team that ultimately could bring the America's Cup back to British waters, where it all started. That would be pretty special.
I'm just wondering, given the choice on a team like you were on in the America's Cup, would you rather be in the role of tactician or skipper, and why?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And a couple of months ago, I would have definitely told you that I would want to be the helmsman, and that's traditionally what I've always done in the past with teams, and enjoyed that role. Really, I got thrown into this position with Oracle as a tactician, and I think one of the previous people said, I quite rightly said that I'd never done that role before, or certainly not at that level. But it's something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And obviously it's important to be with a good team and be working with great guys, which helped a lot. But I did enjoy that role, and perhaps maybe it's something to consider for the future. Maybe playing more of a tactical role than a helming role. I don't know. I think it very much depends the people you can pull together to make a team, and you just got to get the best people you can and work out the different skill sets and who fits best where. I did enjoy that role.
Thank you. With all your experience, do you think you prefer the autonomy of being able to sail alone or as part of a team? Which one do you get the most satisfaction from?
It was something really interesting to experience the 2012 games and managing to be successful to fulfill that goal there. And as I said earlier, doing that in front of a home crowd was amazing. But this last experience, and I've sailed with teams a lot and had some great successes, but nothing really that comes close to what happened in San Francisco. And to share that victory, that comeback with those guys, was the most rewarding sporting experience I think I've ever had. And I think it's just the fact that you're doing it with a group of people. When you do something on your own, okay, you live and die by your own actions, and you're responsible for that. But when you do something with a group of people and you form a bond like we did to get through the situation we're in, and to come out the other side in such a positive way, that was amazing. And I think you often hear about rugby teams and they say, oh, well, we'll remember that moment and we'll walk down the street in 30 years' time and we'll meet the guy and we'll just share that knowledge of what we did together. And I think that's a little bit the same for the team out in San Francisco, what we just went through. And it was the first time I've really experienced that in sport, and it was very powerful and something I would love to experience again.
Just wondering when and why you started sailing?
Well, I started sailing from a very young age with my mum and dad and my sister. My parents were really keen sailors, and it's a nice story. They were from the middle of Cheshire, and they'd never really sailed much before, and they saw an advert for the very first Whitbread Around the World race, which was back in 1973. And as far as I can tell, they were pretty much having a drink with some mates, and they just decided, let's do it, let's do this race. And none of them could really sail or were very good sailors. and they all sort of took out loans or mortgaged their houses to charter a boat to do this race. The only guy who could sail, thankfully, was the navigator. Thankfully, he had a bit of experience, but the rest of them were rank amateurs, and they did this race, and unbelievably, they did pretty well. I think out of 23 starters, they finished 7th overall, which was a great effort. But back in those days, you know, there weren't really professional sports people. Certainly, there weren't professional sailors, and so my father went back to work and pursued a career in business. But they still sail for fun, and that's really how my sister and I got involved, sailing with our family. But it wasn't racing; it was just socially, just going out on the weekend, sailing across to the other side of the bay, something like that. And I started really racing when I was around 8 years old, and my parents got handed down a small Optimist dinghy, which if you haven't seen it, basically looks like a bathtub. But it's what all of the kids around the world learn to sail in. And so I got handed down this Optimist dinghy and started sailing on my own, and just loved it, that sort of sense of freedom that you could get at such a young age, being out on a boat on your own and being in control. And yeah, I never really looked back.
As someone who's been on top of your sport for so long and having accomplished so much, how do you continue to motivate yourself to improve when you've already gone to the top and stayed there for so long?
Well, the great thing about sailing is it's such a diverse sport. I mean, that's one of the things I really love about it, that, okay, you have the Olympics, the America's Cup, sort of the pinnacle of the sport in many ways, also the Volvo Ocean Race. So there's always something new, a different challenge, a different type of boat, type of racing. And obviously we're seeing now with the America's Cup, massive transition to this new style of foiling sailing, which is really exciting for all of us to try and get to grips with that. It's a whole new dimension. Technically, physically, the dynamics, the tactics of racing those kind of boats. So it's really interesting, and you know, thankfully it's a sport that you can do all your life. Okay, at the Olympic level, at the America's Cup level, it's very, very physical. But you know, my hometown in Lymington in Hampshire, there are still people racing socially, you know, quite an advanced age, and that's great to see. And hopefully will still be motivated when I'm an old man to go out there and go racing.
You've mastered dinghy sailing and yacht sailing. Is ocean racing next on the cards?
Well, I love ocean racing, and as I was saying, my father, Roddy, sailed in the first ever Whitbread. It was back then. Now it's called the Volvo Ocean Race. I've done a bit of offshore racing. I did a very famous race called the Sydney to Hobart race, and the Middle Sea race, which is from Malta around Sicily and back. And I also did a great race from Los Angeles to Hawaii, which was, I have to say, you couldn't really call it ocean racing. It was downwind in the trade winds for 5 days in perfect conditions, and I think we changed probably 2 sails the whole race. So that wasn't too tough. But no, I've got a lot of friends who've done the Volvo Ocean Race of late. I mean, that's an incredibly tough race. Yeah, it's something I'd be interested in doing in the future. The one offshore challenge that really stands out for me, which would be fantastic to have a crack at, is the Jules Verne record, which is the non-stop record around the world, which I think currently stands at around 43, 46 days, something like that. So it's amazing to think of the time that it used to take for the old clipper ships to get around the world, and now we've got these amazing multi-hulls that can do it in just over a month. So yeah, that's something that I would love to look at doing.